Hey guys, Black Templar here again. Finally doing another full video build. From start to finish, we're going to be doing something very similar to this. This is a Pre-Heresy World Eater, and so we're going to do from cutting it out, to painting it, to the decals, to the weathering, everything in one go. So this first part is going to be building, and you're going to need a couple of things to do this. First, you're going to need a hobby knife or some kind of cutting instrument. This is for very specific things we're going to be doing after we cut things out of the sprue. And to do that, you're going to need a set of sprue cutters. These are actually just wire cutters, but they're really good quality wire cutters. Make sure that they're sharp and they don't lose the edges. You can tell if you close it, if there's any light coming in between. You know that you've got some dull edges or you got some nicks, and so you need to get them replaced. These are super cheap though, these are like about $9. Also going to need some super glue. This is just Instacure, but anything that's cyanoacrylate, as you can see on the bottom right, that'll work. You can also use liquid cement, so this is Tester's liquid cement. You can use this stuff if you're using only plastic. I am going to be using resin bits, and this doesn't work on resin. So, any cyanoacrylate like Loctite or this stuff here, or GW super glue, no problem. And then something to sand with. I just use this sanding block. It's got a couple of different grits, and it's also kind of worn out really heavily on one side, and so something with that's not super particularly gritty is going to do well for you. So after you got all your materials assembled, you will need something to build into. So, just got a bunch of this stuff. So basically I would be doing a Mark IV Tactical Marine with just a bolter, and so you can see here all these different collaborations here. These are called sprues, and so the kit will come out of the box in a bunch of pieces. As you can see here, there's individual pieces lined in and out of all these different gates, all these different pieces of connecting plastic. So this is actually gray plastic. This is not resin, but we'll get into that in a second. So you're going to need something to put together. I'm going to go through here, grab the pieces that I need to make our MK4 Marine, and then we'll get started. Alrighty, so I have my various parts assembled here to the left. I'm going to be taking a couple of things from a couple different places here on these sets, but I'm going to get into showing you how to do individual pieces. Now, you're going to have to do this for several different parts. Of most models are going to be in excess of maybe 8 to 10, maybe 12, maybe sometimes even more. And so to do the basic assembly, you're going to need to get these parts out of the sprue. To do that, just use your wire cutters, or these are sprue cutters, as I said before, that you can get for decently cheap, even though they're meant to be wire cutters. Again, make sure they have a good sharp tip and they're not dulling, because if you have clippers that are dulled, you will get separation in the plastic and you'll get bending and sort of squishing. You won't get a cutting action. And so like you won't cut through cleanly, and you'll leave things you'll have to clean up later. So we got nice and sharp. Basically what I'm going to do is clip out the chest portion. So we're going to grab this piece here and then the back portion there. Super easy. Just get the clippers lined up as close as you can, basically to the connection point. So you can see this gate here. This is a sprue gate where it connects to the actual portion of the piece. So this piece here connects to the pressed plastic from there. Do this use of the gate. You need to get as close as you can to the gate when you're cutting, simply because you don't want to be cleaning up stuff afterwards. So just give it a quick snip, flip it over, other side, make sure that I'm in frame. Nice clip. And then if you have a really nice, good, clean clip, it won't pop out because it's basically still held together by the pressure of the gates. Real easy, pop it out. You got yourself a piece. And of course, we'll do the front part of the chest plate. Actually, looking at it, I sort of like this one better. So we go right around, snip that, flip them over, and real easy. And again, if you have a really nice, clean cut, it'll pop right out because of the pressure of the gates just holding it in place. So, this is basically our first sub-assembly. A lot of times when you're assembling figures or you're putting things together, you'll do the entire model in sort of pieces of pieces. So this sub-assembly, you can see it's got in the chest piece 2 little tabs. They go into 2 little holes there. And basically it'll just fit together like that once you glued it and stuff. So I'm going to go through, cut out all my pieces, leave them all right here, and then we'll go on to the next part. And as you can see, I went ahead and cut out all of my pieces. I've also got a couple of things that are optional. First among is the chain that you happen to see a lot of times on Pre-Heresy World Eaters, or World Eaters in general. But this is just jewelry chain you can get at a craft store or at Walmart, something like that. I can't tell you the gauge of the thickness, unfortunately, but if you take a model with you, like I usually take the legs with me or something, and then just use that to compare sizes. You also have this stuff, which is just cork. It's just cork. It comes in big sheets. I think this is 1/8 inch or something like that. You can get this just about the same kind of places, office supply stores for like bulletin boards, or you can get it at craft stores. If you get it at a craft store, it comes in a big roll, basically like this. This is only going to run you like $3 or $4. And so I got 2 different sizes of that. You can use this for basing, which I'll show in a little while. But now that I've got everything cut out, basically what you need to do is clean everything up. So if I grab the legs really quick and my knife, when you cut everything out, basically you're going to get these contact points. You can see just there. This is sort of white stuff here, and then if I flip them over on the torso joint area or the hip joint, this is where you've cut the sprue away from the actual part itself, and that stuff needs to get cleaned up. So basically, and this is, you're not supposed to cut away from yourself, but you do really, really short cuts, and you're not really cutting. You're just kind of pressing and holding it and using the pressure of your finger to control it. Basically, briefly demonstrate. We got the piece here, and that needs to come off, so really lightly run along, get that stuff off. Now thankfully on the torso hip joint, it doesn't really matter because the actual contact points with the glue are on the side where the hips are down here. It's not up here. This is a good place for an example. So just pick that back up again on this little tab here. This might give you a little bit of trouble when you're trying to stick him to the base, and so really quickly make sure it's flat. Not to take it off. That's just the actual plastic has been warped a little bit, so it's not a big deal. Something else though that you need to look for, and this is something on every piece you'll need to go around and check. There are these very faint lines, if I get the light just correct. These very faint lines. See how quickly, how close we can push this. That was actually pretty good. So you can see these very faint lines that run along the side of the legs here and up the thigh plate here. This line is the actual mold line that comes about. 2 pieces of plastic or 2 molds were pushed together, and a little bit of plastic seeped out basically when the mold was setting. These are very, very easy to take care of. Basically, if we can see, you're gonna take your knife or your sanding block, which I'll do in a second. Basically make the knife put the knife about a 45-degree angle, and then run it along real gently where the mold line is at. And now you should be able to see really clearly. There's a, get me to focus, not quite, but you can see basically along where the line was, it's smoothed out now, and when you go to paint, there's not going to be a horrible line of plastic there, and that's basically what's going to happen. The paint stuff's going to get stuck in there, and it's going to leave a really defined line. So basically, if you don't want to use a knife, grab yourself a sanding block or a sanding stick or some sanding files, put it up against the part, and then just go really lightly. A couple of passes, nothing crazy. And then rub your finger a little bit on there. And it's a lot easier to see with the sanding block. It leaves a little bit of lines. These lines are not a big deal. You can go down the grits and use something finer, which I'll do now. Just move it over real quick. Get a finer side, and then just go over that to basically really smooth it out. So you can do it a couple different ways. You can use a knife, you can use a sanding block, and you can use sanding sticks. Some people even use nail files. Whatever you got on hand really doesn't matter. So what you're going to want to do is go through all of your parts and clean off the mold lines. Make sure there's no points from the gates anywhere. Make sure those are nice and flat so that when you do set something down, he's going to be nice and straight. So go through all your stuff, clean that stuff up, and I'll see you in a minute. Quick note, everybody, when you're doing your parts and you're cleaning everything up, it's important to remember that Forge World bits, or in this case just resin bits, you can tell they're resin if you have a quick look. This is a very pale gray, sort of a ghost gray or in a white, and this is a very dark gray. This whiter sort of ghost gray is made of resin, whereas this other part is made of standard, probably polystyrene or really hard plastic. But really important when working with Forge World stuff, when you go down to sand it or to cut it or whatever, the residue and the dust from these types of parts is actually dangerous, and you should not be inhaling it. And so make sure you work either in a really well ventilated area or you wear a little hospital mask or something like that, because that stuff is harmful to your respiratory system. So got everything basically cut out and cleaned up. A couple of things to note. I'm using not that it matters. For the Puritan among us, I'm using a Phobos pattern bolt gun, which is typically not used with MK4 Armored Marines. If I can get the damn thing to focus. That's okay. Trust me, it's a Phobos. There you go. So this sort of weapon is generally not used with this sort of loadout for armor, but I think it looks really neat, so we're going to go with it. I will be doing the chain and the cork bases in a different portion of the tutorial, but now that you've got everything cut out and cleaned up, you can start to assemble stuff. We're going to come back again to our glue. You can use liquid cement, or you can use, in my case, I'm going to be using cyanoacrylate, which is just super glue. And for the most part, it's real simple. We're going to do things in sub-assemblies, and so what we're going to have is basically do the legs and the base in one group, the chest, putting it together, and then putting the head in another group, and then doing the arms and the shoulders in one group, and then putting on the backpack last. Sort of working in that sort of sub-assembly strategy to make sure that each time we go to another set of stuff, we're not only doing them correctly, but we're leaving room to make changes, because you don't want to do it all at once to find out that something doesn't fit, or that, you know, as the glue's drying or the glue's setting, that you've made a mistake and you can't get it off, or you got to ruin it to get it off. And so this is just a good way to do things in case you run into problems later. I would recommend starting with the legs, because basically starting from the bottom of the model up is going to give you a good idea of how everybody's going to be posed. And a really easy example of that is, do this without the assistance of gravity. If I set him down on the base like this, and that's how he's glued, very static, very sort of boring and stuff. But if I wanted to, I could grab some of this cork, put it underneath his left foot, or this foot here with the studs, kind of shave him down a little bit to have him look like he's running. Or I can put the feet farther back on the base instead of in the very center, or farther forward, depending on how he's armed and how he's posed the rest of the way. But if I put him farther back here and have the rest of his body facing towards the center, you can leave a bunch of this room here on the base to do texturing and decoration and whatnot. And so keep in mind, starting from the bottom up gives you a great opportunity to really plan out the rest of the figure each and every time you do this. So we're going to do really quick the chest or the torso, because this is super easy. Scoot all that out of the way. Got your two chest pieces, or your two torso bits, like I showed you earlier. There's going to be two holes in the very left and right corners, and on the opposite side there's going to be, of course, the two pegs, and all you have to do is line those two up, basically. And so always test fit something, make sure it's working correctly, set them together. This stuff's already been cleaned up, so we're not worried. That looks just fine. So grab me glue, and with cyanoacrylate, less is actually a better idea. Less is more in this case. Too much cyanoacrylate and basically the bond is not as strong. So real lightly, 1-2 drops in the peg, maybe 1-2 drops on the rim of the neck guard and the rim of the hip. And as we test fitted before, they should go together no problem. Make sure you're conscious of glue coming out of the sides or the very bottom and the top and whatnot. Make sure that you're not touching that stuff. Cyanoacrylate is great because it sets super quick. Give that a second. Make sure, if you're like me and you have an old bottle of cyanoacrylate or one that you've been using for a long time, make sure you clear it. Basically, you don't want stuff getting stuck in there, so whenever you're done using the glue, squeeze it, make sure air is coming out of there just fine. I'm shaking the camera a little bit. Make sure air is coming out of there just fine, and put the top on. If you put the top on too early, you're going to get build up here, and then you're going to ruin your bottle. So that's all set. Looking very nice. Nothing seeping out. I got a little bit of seep there, but that's okay because you're not going to see that. And go around through the rest of your parts, basically start to assemble. Some people I know like to do the arms and the chest basically last, so that they can paint these piping and these cabling and this sort of stud or this node here, whatever. That's totally optional. I tend to not worry about that. But go around to the rest of your assembly, and I'll see you in a minute. Alrighty, so now we're down to basically just the shoulder pads and the head. And this is really a point where you can really start to think about how you're going to pose stuff, how you're going to have your model or your character standing, facing, maybe if they're in motion, sort of to give the suggestion of whatever it is you want to convey with the piece or the figure. Now, this is all glued up together except for the shoulder pads ahead, and then of course the joining here. But now that we have this stuff done from SubAssembly, we can sort of get a better idea of what he maybe is doing. He's standing kind of static, or maybe his feet are kind of pointed this direction. It looks like he might be walking or making a move that way. So what I think I'll do is I'll have him, if you're running you would be more in this position and tilted slightly forward because your momentum is pushing you forward. Maybe have him sort of walking this way and then have his head facing that way to sort of give the suggestion that he's walking and not running. So let's go ahead and do that instead. Just like before, grab your glue. Don't forget less is more when it comes to cyanoacrylate. You really want to be careful. So, stick that on there. Have him sort of walking that way. And the shoulder pads, a good thing to do, at least especially in my opinion, the good thing to do is leave the shoulder pads last, because if you have a bad join, so I had to slightly mess with the joint here to get the Phobos pattern bolt gun to fit correctly. That join there, you can come back, and when you put the shoulder pad on, you can hide that. And so putting the shoulder pads, especially on Space Marines, on last is something you might want to think about or consider. So that's setting. It's not going to be too much of an issue if we keep going. I'll put some down real quick for this left side. And keep in mind that the pad itself is not going to adhere to the very center of the pad. It's going to hold on by the rim. So when you put glue on, make sure that that's where you're placing your bead of glue. So that'll be there. Give that a second to set. Do the other side. Real light. That's actually a little bit more than I would like, but you don't need much. And since this shoulder pad has a little rim, you can see here, if I get it to focus really quick, there we go. So you can barely just there see it's got a rim on one side. You want to make sure that side is facing to the side it wants to protect. That's what the little rims are for, sort of. Sort of position it like that there. So the rim on the pad will be protecting his face. You wouldn't want to put it the other way around because the rim is not going to be blocking anything important, just the back of the backpack, which isn't really going to do much for him. And then we'll stick a little tiny bit here for the head. Don't need much, especially because the head's got a really good join. And again, kind of give him the idea that he's maybe staying alert for something off to the side. Maybe he's walking, but he's got something going on in the distance. Turn his head just about like that. And again, seeing that rim of the pad there, it's meant to protect his face. And so that's why, again, that stuff is supposed to be pointed the correct direction, or maybe you get a better idea of how you want to point it based on what it might be showing, or what it might be up against or whatnot. So there's basically our completed figure. Don't forget to clear your glue as before. And again, that's real important, because if you don't, that stuff will get clogged and then you're going to ruin your whole bottle of glue. So that's basically the assembly portion of it. You can already see that I put him down onto the base and I left the cork out. I decided against that specifically because it would just take too much time in the video. But all you have to do is rip yourself out a piece, put it down onto the base. You can stack it up a couple levels, or you can mix and match different sizes or heights to get yourself the correct elevation. Like I said, if you wanted him sort of standing on a rock, you could put a couple layers of this underneath his left foot, tilt him up a little bit so that give him the idea, or give him the illusion that he might be standing on rock, or maybe an elevated portion of dirt. And that's something too you can do. Take a couple layers of this, put it on one side, and then when you put the basing material later, sort of step the basing material or slide it or build it up in an even direction to give the illusion of him standing up on uphill or going downhill or whatever. So again, we're gonna skip the chain too, because I don't think chain would be a little bit too busy putting it on this leg or on this arm or something like that. I think it looks great just the way he is. So we're gonna keep it here. This is gonna be the completion of assembly. Hope you've enjoyed here part 1. Next part is priming and painting, and basically after painting it's going to be weathering, and then that'll be it. 3-part series. Decals will be in there somewhere as well. Hope you guys have enjoyed so far, and I hope your Space Marines coming on really nice. I'll see you guys next time.